Good afternoon. My name is Elliot from ESBR Boxing. Joined here by my colleagues Lawrence and Elliot. Chaps, how are you doing?
All good, mate. All good.
Good. As you guys, as you viewers will no doubt be aware, we've been going through the various divisions in the British and world scene, and today is the chance of the heavyweights. So as is the usual outline here, we're going to discuss dream domestic fights, who's world number one, dip into a little bit about the best of the rest, and then finally see whether there's anyone who can move up in weight and make an impact. So I'm going to start with you, Lawrence, and I'm going to ask you first and foremost your dream domestic fight at heavyweight, and I'm also going to take away, obviously, because it's one of those rare instances, rare scenes where the British tend to dominate the top of the heavyweight division. So I'm going to take away the option of Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, and ask you for a dream domestic fight. Can involve one of them, but it can't involve both of them. What are you saying?
Yeah, obviously Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, that's not the dream domestic fight. That's just the dream world fight. They just happen to both be British. So I didn't want to use Fury or Joshua in here. I thought that was a bit easy. So I was just thinking about it. I thought, who makes sense and who would be a really interesting matchup? And for me, I was like, you know what? I'd love to see Daniel Dubois. You know, he's on the comeback train. He's taken that loss to Joyce, but he's still young. He's still hungry. And I thought, why not chuck him in there with Derek Chisora? You know, Chisora gives anyone a hard night. He goes for it. And I just think, let's just see Dubois. He's good, but let's just see, you know what, sink or swim. You're in there with another really, really hard fight. You lose this, it's real question marks over you. But if he wins it, he's right there at the top of the division. And I think that would just be a really fun build-up. I think that's the right role for Chisora right now. You know, he's just that kind of, he's that skill check almost at the top of the division where it's like, if you beat him, you can move on to things. If you can't get past him, there's a ceiling on where you are. And I just think for proper domestic fighters, you know, not Fury, not Joshua, who are just top of the division, even White, I think that is the fight that makes me the most excited. That's why we're like, oh yeah, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see how it goes down. That'd be it for me. Obviously, there's loads of great fights. There's loads of great British heavyweights, and you could say something like Joshua and White rematch, but, you know, for me, that's the one where I'm like, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lawrence. And it's important to mention that we don't actually discuss what each other are going to say actually before these recordings. So I'm going to come straight over to you, Stotty, and say, obviously we've got there Daniel Dubois there versus Derek Chisora. How do you see that fight going? How do you see it panning out?
Daniel Dubois would beat Derek Chisora. I think if that happened a year ago, if it happens now, it happens in a year's time. Rate Chisora highly, but I just think he's been into with some very good names, but I just think once he steps up to a certain level, he kind of gets beat. And I just think now it's the wrong fight for Chisora. I think Dubois is how old was he? 15 years younger than Chisora, and punches extremely hard. And after seeing what Chisora was like in his fight against Parker last month, wouldn't end well for Chisora, in my opinion.
You know, it's a fight that I wasn't even thinking about before we sat down today, but it's now it's one that you actually both told me. So now I'm going to go back over to you, Stotty, and ask, okay, Fury and Joshua aside, what's your dream domestic fight heavyweight level?
Yeah, well, my dreams have come true because we're going to hopefully see Fury against Dillian Whyte in a couple of months' time. That was, racked my brains a little bit. I'm a big Daniel Dubois fan, so I was tempted to include him. Tempted to include Joe Joyce in a dream domestic fight, but for me, Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte, arguably 2 top 5 heavyweights in the world. Arguably, I think that the two big characters as well. I think the build up is going to be fantastic, and I just think I'm a big Fury fan, but he is susceptible to being hit, as we've seen throughout his career. He's been on the floor 7-8 times in his career. White can punch very hard, and I think he can possibly hurt Fury. However, saying that, Fury, I just think at times has looked very, very good in his last couple of fights, whether he's been in shape or not. So that is my dream domestic fight, and fingers crossed we are actually going to see it in April.
I'm going to follow you up there and just ask: was the reason you chose that fight due to the fact that Anthony Joshua wasn't stipulated to be with Fury, or was that a fight you'd actually prefer to see style-wise than AJ Joshua? However unpopular that opinion may seem.
Yeah. So. Look, I think that most people are in this country are fans of Anthony Joshua. He's kind of the face of British boxing, arguably British sport as well. He's a massive, massive name. It's been some very entertaining fights, but there is life outside of Anthony Joshua, and there are other fights are available. is a way of putting it. As much as I want to see Joshua against Fury, against Whyte, I think Joshua Joyce would actually be really very interesting as well. As I've said, other fights are available, and Fury White personally, I think could be maybe a bit more explosive than Fury against Joshua. I think like Fury against Joshua, there's a chance Fury could just kind of make the fight boring and just kind of like dumb Joshua down in a boxing sense. Whereas Fury against White, don't know if he'd be able to do that or not. So yeah, that's kind of it. Even if there was the option to have Fury against Joshua, I might still side with Fury White, to be honest.
Okay, I'm going to segue nicely into this, give obviously you, Lawrence, the chance, the courtesy as we gave slightly to see how that fight's going to play out, but also to go in maybe into a bit of a White Fury, I suppose a very sort of swift breakdown / prediction of just where we're at the moment. Obviously, I mean, obviously it's hard to say with the amount of time that Dillian White's been out of the ring, and then again, Stotty's highlighted the difference in the versions of Fury that we've seen fighting against various opponents who raises or potentially lowers his level. But Lawrence, I'm going to come to you and say, so with that fight obviously being announced, how do you see it playing out? Who do you see winning?
It's a great fight. It's a great fight, but I think Fury gets it done. He's got more about him. I do agree with Stotty that White has a path to victory that maybe AJ doesn't have. That he makes it scrappy, he makes it dirty and tries to get maybe something on the inside, get a knockout blow. But I think too much. He can work on the inside as well. Have we seen recently? He's got the punch power now, but he's also got those feints. He's also got that jab. So I think Fury gets it done basically. But it's a scrap, and it's not easy. It's not an easy night's work. But yeah, that's how.
Do you reckon it'll be within the distance, or do you reckon it'll be a KO victory or a points victory, or how do you see it ending?
Yeah, in the distance, because White will know that it can't go to points. So one of them's gonna be knocked out, and Dillian White will know that. And I think Fury will get it done. Probably about the 9th. There you go. Early prediction.
Scotty, I'll come to you there. Obviously, it's your fights. You must have thought about it a little bit there. How do you see it playing out as and when it takes place?
Yeah, no, I think Dillian. One hand, I think Dillian White. He's a very tough guy, and he can take a shot. However, he has been stopped twice in his career and been on the floor against Park and Rivas. So I think that, and if you consider the way that Fury's fought in his last couple of fights, I'd edge towards a Fury KO, but with some rocky moments in between. Wouldn't surprise me if Fury hit the deck again. I think White would win some rounds. So yeah, I think I like Lawrence's prediction of a 9th round, maybe a bit earlier, maybe kind of round 6-7, but 6 to 9 is where I'd kind of go if I had to give you a proper prediction.
Thank you, lads. We'll leave that obviously to nearer the time when the betting show gets underway. But talking about heavyweight scene, I suppose, at a world level, obviously Fury, I suppose, will be in this conversation as well. But then obviously Joshua, Usyk, I suppose, you might, Wilder, all these other names that essentially banded around that sort of top echelon of the heavyweight division. I just want to get your guys' takes quickly, and I'm going to start with you, Lawrence, on who you reckon the division number 1 is at the moment. And then, we'll take it from there. So who's the division number 1? Lawrence, starting with you.
That's Tyson Fury, isn't it? Joshua's got a lot of good wins. He's undefeated, he's pound for pound fighter, but it's Tyson Fury. He's got the statement wins, Klitschko, Wilder. He's got the size, the skill. I don't think anyone beats him. I don't think you can really claim Fury's not number 1. I think all claims have to go through him. Usyk is very talented, but I don't think you can say with someone who's got 3 heavyweight fights. I think that you can say he's the best heavyweight in the world. I don't think you can justify that. I struggle to see how you justify anyone other than Tyson Fury being the answer to that question. But there you go.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Very combative there, and also a lot of truth being spoken. Stotty, I'm going to come to you and say Lawrence has said there that he doesn't believe that anyone other than Tyson Fury can be given as an answer to who's number 1 heavyweight in the world. Are you going to agree, or are you going to disagree?
I'd love to disagree and cause a bit more debate, but I'm gonna agree. Tyson, regardless of belts, Tyson Fury is the best heavyweight in the world right now. However, I think he needs to prove it and leave kind of no doubt in people's minds that he is. I feel like you can't just say I'm the best and leave it at that. You need to say I'm the best and I'm going to beat these other top contenders. Because at the moment, the other contenders around, he's only beaten Wilder. He's not faced White, Joshua, Usyk. So these fights need to happen. Maybe not for him to secure himself as the best heavyweight currently, but to secure that sort of legacy as an all-time heavyweight great. He needs to have those fantastic fights, and we'll see if they happen. We don't really know. But yeah, answer to your question, he's got to be considered the best heavyweight in the world right now.
Okay, so if we leave, I suppose, Fury aside, we've spoken a lot about Tyson Fury, a lot about Anthony Joshua. We'll even take Usyk aside because obviously he's a champion, and we talk maybe about then who's the best of the rest. Now, I suppose arguably you both could say Dillian White, and if that does happen, I'm going to ask you for who you're going to say other than Dillian White. I'm essentially looking for a world level best of the rest. I mean, there's obviously various names in there that are ranked fairly highly. I mean, you've obviously got Parker, former world champion, Ruiz Jr. Then there's obviously other, like the generation coming up that you mentioned. Joe Joyce is ranked fairly highly as well. All these sort of other names. So I'm going to ask you essentially who, aside from the champions and aside including Anthony Joshua, who you reckon is the best of the rest and why. And I'm actually going to start with you, Elliot Stott.
Cool. Yeah, tough question. But someone who I've been very impressed with for a little while now, someone who I think has been avoided for 2-3 years and it may be in danger of being avoided to the point that people are going to stop avoiding him when he's kind of past his best, is Filip Hrgović, the Croatian, who's 14-0, 12 stoppages. I don't really feel like he's been tested too much yet. I feel like there's been a situation where he's kind of needs to fight someone in the final limiter for the IBF title, but no one seems to want to fight him, and I can understand why. Big lump for heavyweight. I'm not going to hype him up too much and say that he's the best heavyweight ever, and he's going to do this and going to do that. But in terms of the best of the rest, that's someone who I identify and someone who in the next, I think the only thing about Hrgović is he needs to have those fights. He needs to have those tests of top 20, top 15 guys, because at the moment he hasn't had them, and that's not really his fault. But that's someone who I feel like can challenge the division in the next 12 to 18 months. Yes,
obviously, I mean, there was talk recently, wasn't there, about Hrgović potentially fighting Ortiz. And I think Ortiz is looking to sidestep that, as I think have other fighters around that division as well. And then obviously looking at his record, and he's fought really, I suppose, one of the only real names known to a kind of Western audience would probably be Eric Molina. So again, yeah, I think it's definitely a valid shout. At 29 years old as well, there's still some years left. So hopefully he can he'll be able to pick up a credible opponent and maybe work his way through the rankings that way. Lawrence, I'm now going to come to you. Same question: who outside of those elite champions do you say is the number one in the division?
I've kind of got two answers here. One's a bit more obvious, and one I think is essentially a better version of Stotty's answer, actually. But we'll come back on that. So the first kind of obvious one is Joe Joyce. He's just someone on the come up. There's those former world champions, but this is someone who's progressing, who's only progressed forward in their professional career so far. Joyce has got the amateur pedigree, and now he's got those wins against those kind of a lot of fringe world level fighters. People who've had a title shot here and there. And I think he's the one who I think is really ready to kind of step up to that top table, really fight those top guys that you kind of mentioned in the intro to this question. Your Ruizes, your Parkers, for example. He's one where I'm like, yeah, he's 100% ready to be right at the top. But I see your Hrgović, and I would like to raise you an Olympic gold medalist, not Tony Yoka, but a guy, Bakadir Jalilov. I don't know if I've pronounced that quite right. I'm sure the Uzbek contingent of viewers here will be wincing at my pronunciation. But he is 9-0, all stoppages. He's 6'7". He's just won an Olympic gold medal. He doesn't get hit that much. He's not just a big hitter and a big lump, 6'7", but he is a beast. He's 27, younger than Hrgović. Talk about being avoided. No one is going to fight this guy. I'm telling you, no one is going to fight Jalilov. The guy is a tank.
We'll switch this now into one to look out for the future. Can you please repeat, Lawrence, the name of that fighter that we're going to have?
Bakadir Jalilov, I believe. Jalilov, I'm confident is the right pronunciation. Bakadir is a bit of a guess, but yeah.
And there's no threat of him being a Nikolai Valuev. There's no risk of that from your expert opinion?
No, he's way better than he just won the Olympic gold medal. This guy's quality. I'm getting so passionate about this guy now randomly, but trust me, you need to know his name. He's better than Hrgović. He's better than Duar. He's better than Alan Babic. Anyone like that. Is hot. I don't know why I mentioned Babic. He's just the worst version of Hrgović. But anyway, there you go.
I suppose what I would say, so we've got the three names there, only two of whom I'm going to be able to pronounce. But if you go into even Joe Joyce as well, and then Hrgović, and the third name that Lawrence was saying, out of those, I suppose those three fighters there, looking at obviously Tyson Fury and Usyk as being the two champions, who out of those three then do you reckon will become a world champion first? If you consider the fact that Tyson Fury is 33, may not have too many fights left. Usyk again is 35, may again won't have too many fights left. We could conceivably be in a situation where the belts get split somewhat or fragmented somewhat. And I would say out of those three guys that you've listed, who do you reckon would stand the best chance under the best promotional banner they've got of becoming a world champion first? And I'm going to start with you, Lawrence.
First, okay, world champion first, I think it is Joe Joyce. The only way he could struggle is if he just catches the tail end of those guys like Fury and Usyk and just finds himself a little bit short. But if we say they theoretically retire before Joyce quite makes it, he'll be the obvious contender. You know, think about his profile, his potential monetary value. You know, from a promoter's standpoint, they're going to want him as a world champion. So the answer there is Joe Joyce. But the other two, I'd say, even Hrgovic as well, maybe they have a better chance of kind of being that kind of unified world champion, that real top level, where Joyce might not quite be that amount of quality.
So Lawrence has done a very good job there promoting his man. Are you going to agree with him, or are you reckon any of the other two could come through first?
I think Joyce is very effective at what he does. I just think that at that top level, I think he would get exposed because of his lack of speed. To be honest, I think that Fury's very quick for someone of his size. Joshua's quick, Wilder's quick, and Usyk's very skillful. He's beaten Joyce before, so don't quite see it happening for Joyce at that top level. However, I do think he's a good solid top 10 heavyweight. Hrgovic, on the other hand, I from what I've seen of him, I just think he's top quality. And as we mentioned before, there's a reason why he's waited over a year, 2 years to try and get this eliminator fight that we don't know if it's actually ever going to happen. That's the guy who's most likely to win a world title, and hopefully do in the next year or so.
Thank you, guys. So if we step finally outside of the heavyweight division now, then we're going to go and look, essentially, I suppose, take a glance at the cruiserweight division and ask ourselves whether there's anyone that we reckon can come up from that division and make inroads at the heavyweight level. I suppose we can give them a bit of a time frame of several years as well, work their way through the rankings somewhat. I'm not expected to throw them necessarily straight into unification heavyweight fight. Obviously, some of the names, and then if we have to try and say Marius Brutus without mentioning the rap that he's been put online recently, but then obviously names like Dorticus, Oakley, all those other sort of names that are down there. Gassiev, is there any one of those guys that you reckon could come up to the heavyweight division and cause a stir? And I'm going to start with you, Elliot Stotts.
Yeah, I think perhaps the obvious answer, I think, is Lawrence Okolie, partly because I think we know he is going to move up to heavyweight in time. I think it's just about the right time to do that. And once he's accomplished what he wants to accomplish in the cruiserweight division, how much of an impact he can make at heavyweight, I think is interesting. I think that if you look at what Usyk's done in the last year or so, in the amount of fights he's done it as well, is extremely impressive. And that sort of move up to heavyweight doesn't happen very often. We might have to wait another 25, 30 years to see something similar like that happen. But Okolie is the guy who I think is very awkward, very difficult to beat. In my opinion, he's not really been tested that much at cruiserweight, especially in the last 2 or 3 fights. And he's someone, I'm not going to hype him up as someone who would win a heavyweight title, but he's someone who as his body kind of develops and he gets that bit older, it'd be interesting to see how he is suited to the heavyweight game, but we will see.
Thank you very much. And then Lawrence, the question over to you. Anyone in the cruiserweight division you reckon can come up to heavyweight and start making impressions?
Yeah, Okolie's the obvious answer, and he definitely will at some point come up to heavyweight. He's made that pretty clear, and he's got the size for it. But I think that's definitely down the line. He's got a lot left to prove at cruiserweight. I don't think he's in a rush. So Okolie in the long term is definitely the correct answer to this question. But looking in sort of the next 12 to 24 months, I really like the idea of Uniel Dorticos moving up. I mentioned him in my video when I was talking with the cruiserweight division with Paul, but I really rate the guy, and he's got the physicality for the heavyweight division, which is often the big question mark with the guys at 200 pounds. So he's 6'3", that's as tall as Usyk. He's got a bigger reach. He's a huge puncher at cruiserweight. He's really powerful. So he should retain that knockout power at heavyweight, theoretically. But he's got those fundamentals. He's got those good Cuban fundamentals. He's not a bad boxer. And also, I think it makes sense for him in the sense that he's a top cruiserweight. He's really, really good. He's one of the best in the division. I think the Ring have got him ranked number 2, actually, above Okolie. but also I'm not sure quite where he gets his world title from. He's lost to Breedis, he lost to Gassiev, and I think he's done it in cruiserweight, basically. You know, he's not super old, but he is in his 30s, and I think that's the one where it's like he needs a change and he needs a refresh. And you know what, as well, he's Cuban, and everyone loves a Cuban heavyweight. Everyone goes on about them, you know. You talk about Luis Ortiz, okay, oh, he's old and a southpaw, no one cares. And you say, oh, but he's Cuban. Suddenly everyone's interested. Everyone loves a Cuban heavyweight. It's not there.
You know, I'm actually going to say I think Dorticos is a great shout as well. I think there'll be some really fun fights made with his style up at heavyweight as well. But I'm actually going to pick up on the Lawrence Okolie thread just because you both mentioned him. And I want to finish this discussion off with, if he moved up now into the heavyweight division, and if I name essentially, obviously you've got Fury, Usyk, Joshua Wilder, White, Parker, Ruiz, Ortiz, Joyce, Hrgovic, Sanchez, top 10 for the Ring magazine rankings there. Where do you think Okolie would fit in? Do you think he would fit in at the top 10 now? Do you reckon, or do you reckon he'd be outside of those guys? And I'm going to start with you, Lawrence.
If he moved up right now, let's give him the benefit of doubt and say he puts on the weight well. You know, that's not just moving up to heavyweight means he doesn't have a training camp, doesn't diet well. I think he's around the bottom end of that top 10. I still think, you know, I think Sanchez is ranked there. I think he beat him. He's on that kind of fringy level. He gives all those guys sort of below the top 3 big guys a really hard night. You know, even someone like Parker's a great fighter and would come in with big weight on him. Even Dillian White would struggle with Okolie in some ways. You know, Okolie's got that longer style that White might struggle to close the distance. So he's 5 to 10.
And Elliot, I'm going to come to you. Same question. Round us off. Take us home nicely.
Not for me. No. Like I would hope he would do. I'd wish him all the best at heavyweight. I'm an Okolie fan, but not for me. I just think that he's not had enough experience. He's not been around a long time. He's not had a huge amount of experience as a pro. And I think that if you consider obviously cruiserweight limit of 200 pounds, heavyweight, there is no limit. And you've got guys like Dillian White who are 2.5, 3 stone heavier than him. And that's just, it's difficult. I think that transition is very difficult. I'll just go back to my previous point. Doing what Usyk's done is phenomenal. And it's just really not easily done. So for him to be straight in that top 10 now, not for me. Top 20, yes. Top 15 maybe, but top 10, not for me. I think there is too many guys who are that much bigger and stronger and punch harder than him currently. So yeah, not for me.
Thank you very much, Stotty. So so guys, that rounds up the heavyweight summary there, British and international scene. Check out for the next 12 to 18 months. We could be seeing Okolie up there. We could be seeing Fury. We could hopefully see some of these fights we want to see essentially made. But yeah, thank you very much both for your time, and thank you guys also for watching.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.